Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today, our guest is Conrad Neufeldt, and he's a mortgage broker and real estate investor. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Conrad, tell us how did you get into mortgage broker?
How did I get in? So I graduated. So I'm only 34, but when I graduated from university, I wasn't a mortgage broker. I just took a salaried position, and it paid like super well. Like I was making six figures right out of university, nice. And which many of my graduating class were not. And it was super comfy. It was super whatever. And in those 3 years that after I had graduated, I had received a little over 40 job offers, and it was super flattering, and I turned them all down. But I realized, man, I have got no upward growth. I've got no, I am in my young 20s, and I feel like I have hit the ceiling already. And that sounds really ungrateful, right? Because when you're making that kind of money, you should be ecstatic. But I was like, man, I just this can't be it, right? It was a really hollow feeling. So then I happened to be buying a house, and the mortgage broker that I had was like, man, Conrad, you graduated with your business, you know a lot about finances, because you've had the dad that you had was really religious about knowing your finances, right? And so then she's like, you'd make a good mortgage broker. And I was like, well, what kind of money can you make? And she's like, oh man, you can make so much money. And so then long story short, I became a mortgage broker and went from earning six figures to $18,000 that first year. It's a good move. my wife almost killed me, but we made it. It was it was truly a good move in hindsight, but yeah. First couple years, little rough.
Right. So what is it about being a mortgage broker that kind of gets you excited, gets Conrad excited in the morning to get up and go to work?
Problem solving and helping people. I remember to this day, which is almost 10 years ago, that I was dealing with two files, right? And they just happened to be one of my largest mortgages that I had ever done, and one of my smallest mortgages that I've ever done happened in basically the same week, right? It was the same week. One was on a Monday and one was on a Friday. So it was basically the same week. And I remember that when the big one closed, right? Big commission check. I was like, yeah, I was pretty excited, but I was incredibly more excited about the fact that the smaller one had closed, because it was a single mother, and the husband had left her basically high and dry, and she had no way of making things work, and she didn't know how money worked because he took care of everything, and just was she had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, no real parents that could help because they weren't educated in this sense either. And I remember when we qualified her, and when she could take her son home, right? And that was the big part there, where she could take them home, and we had solved all of those problems, and there were many to solve.
Right.
I remember her crying. And this is back before we did things 100% digitally. She's sitting in front of me and she's crying. And I remember going this is why I'll do this. And I've never lost that feeling. Every client you call is potentially another problem to solve. And that I think that got renewed and resurrected through the pandemic, when there was a lot of people in financial straits that needed all the help that they could get. And I don't know, that kind of re-injuvenated me again.
Right. Well, that's good. What are some of the mistakes that you're seeing people make, before they come in and see you?
Before they come in, I would say, well, there's two. One is, where are you getting your information from, right? And then the second would be, how are you validating? What kind of heuristic, what kind of structure are you trying to determine that information is true? Because prior to this, we talked about meme cultures, right? And how there's, this wisdom that exists on YouTube, which is ironic because I'm on YouTube, but there's YouTube, there's Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, all those things. And people are getting a lot of information from that. And what you'll find is there is some actually really good pieces of information out there. but they are truly the diamond in the rough. There's significantly more stupid things you could learn to do on those. So what's unfortunate is people will go, they'll get their information from this, but then the second part is that they won't necessarily validate it. They'll just think of it as true, right? And it's like, well, I heard this. So right. I think the biggest thing that you can do is, and I tell people this all the time, I have no problem with trust, but verify. No problem at all. You can trust that what I am telling you is true, and I live by like the motto, you won't always be happy with what I have to say, but it'll always be the truth. Right. And I'm brutally honest, almost to a fault sometimes, but if you don't have that relationship with your mortgage broker or anybody really, any of the professionals you have in your financial sphere, where you can't trust that what they're saying is necessarily true. I mean, you should be verifying even more, but even if you completely trust them, there's nothing wrong with verifying. Like I'll have people who go, hey, Conrad, you told me that, in my particular case, I should be getting a fixed mortgage instead of a variable, right? I read that a variable is good because of this reason and this reason and this reason. And we'll go, well, actually this point is true and this point isn't. And this is why it doesn't apply to you. And this one, that's a great conversation to have. They still trust, but there's nothing wrong with verifying, right? So, and that's particularly true if your main source of wisdom isn't a professional that knows, first of all, the industry that you're in. So in this case, a mortgage broker. If you don't have a mortgage broker that truly knows what the hell they're talking about, and then B, knows your situation intimately enough to be able to apply that, because there's those two things, you should be verifying out the wazoo.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, because lots of times when people are, getting mortgages, it's for different reasons. And each person needs things for, different reasons. And because of that, if they're not communicating that, to you or you're not asking them, a lot of mistakes can be made there.
And like mistakes in my sphere are expensive. Like
right.
If you make a mistake on your mortgage, it's applied on a couple $100,000 loan or a $750,000 loan or whatever, right? Like mistakes can cost you quite a bit of money.
Right. So when these new clients are coming in to talk to you, meet with you for the first time, what are some of the questions that you wish that they were asking you that they don't?
So the clients themselves, right?
Correct.
What should they be asking me that they don't? Well, some of them come pretty prepared, but I would say most of them, that's a good question. Oh, this one, it's around interest rates actually, because a lot of people just think an interest rate is an interest rate and lowest is always better. Right. What they should be asking is, why are there dozens and dozens of lenders? And what's the difference between them all when some of them have all the same rate, right? Because that's a big part there. So this is an analogy that I give to every single one of our clients that we take on across the country. It goes like this. Let's say you and I were shopping for a car loan, okay? And I gave you two choices, car A, or not a car loan, but a car. So let's say you have a car for $3,000 and a car for $5,000. And I said, what is the better deal? Well, naturally, given the information that we were just presented with, we would say, well, obviously car A, it's $3,000. That's a no-brainer. But we also know from our own car buying experience, we would never actually shop for a car that way. Why? Well, first of all, we have no idea the make and model, if it even fits our family's needs, car A versus car B. We have no idea the condition of the vehicles. For all we know, car A needs an $8,000 engine or a $2,000, like maybe it's missing doors. Like we have no idea, right? We have no idea how expensive it is to insure. We have no idea of the gas mileage. Maybe it's going to cost us more in the long run. So there's all sorts of costs that might happen in the now and over time that make car A way more expensive, despite the fact that it came with the lower price tag. And mortgages are a lot like that. The number one thing that I try to drill in people's head, because they're not asking that question, is what is the value of an interest rate? Well, the interest rate is nothing but the price of the mortgage. It doesn't actually tell you what you're trading behind the scenes. Yeah, it comes with money, but does it have an unnecessary collateral charge? Is there a bona fide sales clause on it? How are the penalties calculated? Those are all big. Does it have things like portability and assumability? So there's all sorts of stuff that you might be trading behind the scenes, right? We saw as an example last year, right, where people who 4 or 5 years prior picked a slightly lower interest rate to save themselves $28 a month, only to be slapped with a $100,000 mortgage penalty last year, right? Like that's what their quote was $100,000 to break their mortgage. Well, you don't have to be great at math to realize $28 a month takes a long time to get to 100,000.
Right.
Right. But that's because in their head, they took the lower interest rate. So they did good. They got the best product. Now, that's not to vilify the lowest interest rate and say that lowest interest rates are always bad. That doesn't work that way either, right? It just means that if you're going to pick the lowest interest rate, know intimately what are you actually signing? What is those contracts? What are the pros and what are the cons? Because oftentimes when you do step into lower, there are going to be trade-offs to get that lower interest rate. It's not just, you're not just somehow magically better to this one lender. That's not how it works, right? I mean, in some cases that is, but most times there's something else that's going on. There's some kind of trade-off that you're making. Now, sometimes that trade-off might not really even apply to you, in which case, great, take the lower interest rate. Like, so instance, this might be a nuance that exists only in Canada, not necessarily for the States, but it illustrates the point. Like a bona fide sales clause doesn't allow them to refinance their mortgage when they have less than 20% equity in their house, right? Mm-hmm. And that might also be true for FHA loans and all the other types of loans that you guys have there. But in Canada, that's particularly true if you have less than 20%. So to take the lower interest rate where the trade-off is you have a bona fide sales clause, which doesn't allow you to refinance anyway because you have less than 20%, means nothing. It's preventing you from doing a thing you can't do anyway. So cool, take the lower interest rate and rock away with it. But if the lowest interest rate comes with massive penalty, once again, it may still make sense to do it. Probably not, but you should at least know. And then that way you can at least make the decision for yourself. Like we'll always tell people, look, I will explain it to you. I will make sure you know full well what it is that you're signing. But at the end of the day, it is your decision and it is your choice. You're the one that has to live with this mortgage for years, not me. So make sure you understand it.
Right. So you're working with many different people, like you said, you had just, earlier when we were talking, you said about, hey, I had 2 contracts, close within the same week, and one was really big, one was really low.
Yeah.
I guess, when do you start working with people? When do you want people to start talking to you to kind of become their go-to professional?
I like that question. And I honestly think this applies to all financial professionals, accountants, literally everything. The sooner, the better. But here's the key piece of advice there. And there's 2 things there. One, when you're dealing with them, be upfront about your situation from the start. There is nothing wrong with you approaching someone and being like, look, I don't have a ton of money. I'm not ready to buy a home for years yet. I don't, whatever. But what I want to do is be prepared. What can you tell me to help get you there? Right. So that's one. And then the second thing is to actually listen and apply that advice. Right. Because, we've had people in our case where we were working with someone for 3 years before they bought a home. Right. And they didn't just had nothing. They had less than nothing. They had declared bankruptcy. They had whatever. And they were like, look, we had declared bankruptcy in the past. And they were upfront. They said, look, Conrad, we cannot buy a home. We know this, but someday we want to. What can we do right now? And obviously their situation was a little bit more complex. So we said, look, this is what you're going to have to do over the next year. Well, they did it. They called me the next year and they said, hey, look, Conrad, we have done these things. Now I'm significantly invested in you because now I know not only it makes us feel good too, because it means like, wow, we're making a difference in this person's life. Like whether there's money or not, I mean, I still get a high off of that to this day. So it's great. They're doing what we told them to do. Here's what you do year 2. Here's what you do year 3. And every single year, Conrad, we did this. And they would give me little updates and it's great. Now, am I spending a tremendous amount of time with them? No, of course not. Right. I have people who are buying in the day now that need my attention, that need like all of my effort, making sure that they get approved. But, we can still spend a little bit of time here and there along the way. And if I know that you're listening to me, I'll be more than happy to help.
Right.
Right. And you want to find those professionals too. The professionals, and this is my experience. So I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus or anything like that, but this is my experience. If you're dealing with a professional that refuses to help you until you are absolutely ready, my experience is that's the same type of professional that's likely going to screw you over, right? Because you're a transaction. There's no relationship. You're entirely transactional. And if they can make a little bit more money off of you by doing some goofy shit behind the scenes, then goofy shit they'll do.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you there in the fact that I think it's important to find a professional in all the different, phases that we've talked about, that is going to be looking to develop a relationship with you and not be transactional. And I think that that's one of the big things that people don't understand when using a professional, that it's a relationship, not a transaction. And I think that that's something that's important.
Well, it should be. It should be a relationship.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
There are people who will transactionalize it.
Right. So you've given us a couple things with why somebody should use a professional by you. Is there something else out there that another reason why somebody should use a professional like you when it comes to getting mortgages?
Well, mortgage brokers, and like I said, there's nuances between how Canada and the United States work, but even speaking generally, there are many reasons why that would be the case. Try learning the last, let's say 10 or 20 years worth of mortgage history, which all, by the way, has a direct impact on you, right? To know why certain things are done, to know, but not only that, to have an indication of what might be done in the future, right? How this might impact you, how this might, what your renewal might look like, because you're committing to this thing over here now in today's world, right? Which all is very true. Mortgages change daily. Mortgage rules change frequently enough. And we're not talking about they're different from the 80s. Yeah, they are. They're also different since February, and they're different since 2020, and they're different since 2018, and they're different from 2010. And there's countless changes that are always coming, and countless revisions as the mortgage market and non-mortgage market, the main market as a whole, it's all responding to each other, right? And there is no way that you can do enough research possibly to become an expert in this thing. You could do enough, you could know enough to get in, but the things that are often going to totally destroy you financially aren't the things you know. Very rarely people don't make a ton of or lose a ton of money because they made a mistake that they knew about. Oftentimes, we're oh, I got that wrong, right? More people than not make a mistake because they didn't know something, not because they knew something wrong, incorrectly, right? So it's oh, I didn't know my penalties would be calculating like that. Or I knew that my penalties would be calculating like that, but I didn't know how much those micro adjustments in the variables could amount to such a massive difference, right? And there's how could you know that, right? There's mortgage brokers who do this part-time who have no idea what the hell they're doing, and they are infinitely more experienced than you are.
Yeah. I think, I always try to tell people, that it's important to use a professional who whatever it is, if it's the CPA, if it's a mortgage broker, if it's an estate attorney, business attorney, whatever it is, it's important to use one that you feel comfortable with. But I think the bigger piece of it is that your other professionals will work with. So you have a team that's working together for your common good. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't look at.
See, and so I think there's two things there. The trusting and the trusting is one of them, but it's also a good way of vetting the professional that you're dealing with. So as an example, if you trust your mortgage broker or your accountant or whatever, and you're starting to build your team, because I do think cohesiveness is important, right? If your realtor and mortgage broker aren't on the same page, or your realtor and your lawyer aren't on the same page, or your accountant and your lawyer, any one of those pieces is out of joint, it could have some nasty financial consequences for you, right? Because one might be trying to do one strategy while the other one is doing something completely different, and they may not mesh, right? You need kind of all of it together. But if you're dealing with a professional and they're I only work with so-and-so, you have to use my accountant, or you have to use my realtor, you just got to do it, I would be cautious or leery about why that's the case, right? Now, all of a sudden you have to be asking yourself, okay, well, do you get a referral bonus? What's the nature of that? We have, as an example, we have realtors that we work with. We get nothing from them. They'll call us and be thanks for the referral. What can we pay you? Not a damn thing. Right. I don't want a single one. I make more than enough money. I don't care. What I want you to do is when I send someone to you, I want to know without a shiver of doubt that you are going to take care of them. Right. And that's all I care about. And then the flip side of that is if you're talking with, let's say, your accountant and your lawyer and your real estate agent, and they go, wow, that mortgage broker is just an idiot, and they're all in agreement, probably a good idea to switch, right? So it works both ways, right?
Right.
You need to, so having everybody together, and I mean, I always use the kumbaya. That's what I always tell people. I'm like, all your professionals should be able to sit around a campfire, like each other enough to sing kumbaya, and wake up the next day and hit the ground running, right? Because that kind of cohesiveness could actually save you a ton of money and open up opportunities that might not actually exist to you otherwise, right? If you have the proper tax structure, if you have the proper, if you're self-employed, if you have the proper accounting structure, if you have the proper, right? There's ways that can impact you.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I really believe that having the professionals work together, yes, it's going to cost you a little bit up front, but it's going to save you so much more than later on.
Cost is negligible.
Right.
Like I've seen people do just penny pinching the stupidest. Oh, I didn't pay my mortgage broker. Oh, I didn't pay my my accountant, right? I did it myself. And then all of a sudden it's like, I made a boo-boo. I owe the IRS $5,000. It's like, meanwhile, your accountant was $3,000 or less. Right. And it's like, you moron.
Right. No, I see. I mean, I do. I see that. And then the other thing I see is where people just talk about, how they screwed their professional team out of money. Well, I didn't pay them for that type thing.
Oh yeah, but
and
I don't.
It's just like, to me, it's like, okay, whatever you do, don't follow that guy, because, if that's the stuff that they're doing, then again.
Well, that's on TikTok though. There are TikToks out there where they'll be like, I can't even remember the specifics of them. It's like, this is how I got out of paying blah blah blah. And it's like, that to me is a tutorial how you'll never get good advice from a qualified professional ever.
Right.
You want subpar advice for the rest of your life. Follow that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about, TikTok and stuff. I mean, obviously you have a lot of social media that you do with YouTube and so forth. Tell us some about that.
So I'm trying, right? So like up until now, I've been, busy as a mortgage broker. I'm an extraordinarily busy mortgage broker, but this past year I was like, it was partly out of selfish need in our end without having to repeat myself a million times. It's like, we get this question all the time. I'm going to make a 10-minute video. And then when we get this question, not only can I give you the answer you're looking for, but I can do it in a rehearsed way that gives you way more information in a shorter amount of time. And then it saves me time. So that's where the initial need came out of it. And then I started realizing man, there's so much bad education out there, where just ugly advice. And when I say ugly, I mean, I can't tell if they're giving advice because they're trying to go viral, or if they're hoping that they'll get a client out of it that they can just milk through and through, or what it is. Or I can't tell if it's just a genuine stupidity or a malicious stupidity. Right. It's stupid, but I just can't tell what the intent is behind it. So I'm like, I got to outweigh that. I'm going to throw as much out there as I possibly can. So yeah, I've got a very humble following. I'm still under 1,000 subscribers, right? I'm working on it. Right. But I've had some videos get some pretty substantial hits, which was nice. And even though I have such a small following still, I'll have people that I don't know reaching out to me and being like, hey, you know what, man, I followed your advice and I did this thing and this is how much it saved me. And at one point I was printing them and I would post it on my wall for a week just so I could look at it and be like, this is why I do it. You know what I mean? I never made any money off the guy, but I know that guy ended up being better from it. And it never took me any extra time. I just had to put what I know online. So hell, I'll put more online. It's and then the fact that, I'm getting money from some clients along the way, where people are like, I'd like you to be my mortgage broker. Clearly, you know your stuff. Great. Awesome. So there's an incentive for me to continue doing it even selfishly, but the main motivator, the main reason why we started it is way more powerful to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll
be doing this in 5 years, and hopefully by then I'll have 1,000 subscribers.
There you go. For me, I know that I get a lot out of when I've helped somebody's business grow, or I've helped, an individual out of a bad situation, and it's really helped them and it's impacted their life. And to me, that's like you said, I mean, it's not all about money.
Yeah.
And I
But
think
let's say it
that's
was.
a lot of it.
Let's say it was. Let's say your intention was to be completely selfish, right? I to this day get more referrals from past clients than literally every source combined. Every other source combined. Yep. Online ads, realtors, YouTube, like literally every online source combined doesn't even come close to past referrals, right? Which I think is a good testament to me, which I'm proud of, right? But I think even if you're like, that's why I'm going to treat everyone like gold because they're a good referral source. Good. Don't screw them over. Be honest about things. Take give them sincere coaching, whatever. Even if you're completely dishonest about it, it has a great end. I'm like, great power to you. Now it's better, in my opinion, to actually be fueled by that so that you don't fall astray to some of these lender promotions will come out and be like, hey, if you do this mortgage product, you'll get paid this extra amount of money. I've never once done that where I'm just like, you'll send me to Mexico if I send you this many deals. I'm like, does your product suck? Then nope, but you need to find, once again, it comes back down to trust or whatever. But yeah, like even if you're selfish, it's a no-brainer. Treat people like you'd want to be treated and you'll do just fine.
Yeah.
What a novel concept, hey?
Karma.
Yeah. What a novel concept.
Right. Exactly. All right, Conrad, we've covered a bunch of stuff. And what haven't I asked you that you wish I had?
The rate thing is really the number one thing. It's like, get off rate. Stop being focused about rate. Instead, start asking questions like, what is the best mortgage product for me and why? Right? Understand that, because rate is only one of many, 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 many factors that might come to bite you in the butt. In fact, even asking that question, that exact question, what should you ask to your mortgage broker or to your accountant or to your whatever? Start asking your financial advisors those questions too. And they all have all sorts of tidbits for you, right? So yeah. I think that would be the main one.
Because I think it's important. I mean, that's a great point about not just what the rate is, but it's just like, and I know that you've told me that in Canada, you guys have different terms with mortgages and stuff. But, if I'm only going to be here for 5 years, why do I need a 30-year mortgage?
Right. Yeah.
So, maybe that's when that variable mortgage is the right thing for you, because I'm only going to be here for a short period of time and I'm selling. So it's not going to make
all sorts of things.
So I think that is important to find, to make sure your professional is asking you the right questions also. And
making sure you provide them with enough information, because not everyone is different. Like if you go to a mortgage broker and they say, I always do this, then terrible mortgage broker. Right. Unless they all have identical clients. That's you've done impossible. What, 10 mortgages? Right. Like what? Like, right. You got to, there's so many different types of mortgages out there. Like it's actually quite staggering for what people don't realize. Like there's all sorts of stuff, right? And if you're not conscious or what the differences are and how they apply specifically to you, like it's very rare that you'll end up with the same mortgage as your brother or your dad or your neighbor or your employees or your whatever, right? Like they're all different for a reason. So understand why it fits is a good one.
Agree. So if people like what they hear, they want to talk to you, they want to see your YouTube,
go to YouTube, man, and subscribe while you're there. I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, YouTube would be the way to do it. I usually put my my contact information in a lot of the videos and stuff like that. They can literally just YouTube my name and I'll pop up, and yeah, hopefully I can get to that 1,000 subscribers sooner than later.
There you go.
The grind.
Right. It's a challenge.
Fun though. It's
right.
fun.
Right. Hey, I really appreciate you being on today. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. Thanks a lot.
Great. Today, our guest was Conrad Neufeldt, who's a mortgage broker and real estate investor. See you next week.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.